Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Edu Tech Kit, a series of podcasts we're doing here at Microsoft, where we're always bringing the most interesting people and projects that span education and technology across Central and Eastern Europe geography, but not only that. My name is Denis Kurto. I'm the Education Marketing Manager for Central and Eastern Europe, and my role is to work with students, teachers, researchers, and education leaders to help them digitally transform and improve education and education processes and research through the use of data and technology. In this edition, we're touching base on an evergreen and highly important topic we usually refer to as future skills. What are those future skills? What's trending in the employment market? What is the need, and how can we prepare to address those skills? And for that, I'm very happy to be joined by two very interesting, as I was saying, guests. My colleague Alexa Joyce, Future Skills Director at Microsoft globally, and Mr. Spiros Protopsaltis, Governor and Chair of the Board of Directors of VIPA, which is the Greek Public Unemployment Service. So with that in mind, Spiros, I'll start with you. Maybe share a bit of what the governor and chair of board of directors is doing in the unemployment service. What does your day look like? What are your challenges? What are your mission? And how do you encompass this with the future skills story in your organization?
Well, thank you so much, Dennis, for the opportunity to share what we've been doing here in Greece in the front, the constant battle against unemployment. As a new administration, we took over approximately 3 years ago, September of 2019. And obviously, we have a very big challenge ahead of us, given that Greece at the time had the highest unemployment rate in Europe. This was the outcome of a decades-long economic slump that Greece was facing, a downturn. For many, many years, it had a shrinking economy, significant economic problems. They've been well documented and covered in the press. But following the election of July 2019 with a new government, we started seeing a number of improvements in the labor market. So let me take stock. When we took over, we were at 17.4% unemployment. Today, we're at 12.6%. That's a 30% reduction within 3 years. We're not happy. We're not celebrating. We're not the highest unemployment rate in Europe anymore. Spain, unfortunately for them, now has a highest unemployment rate than Greece. But nevertheless, we still have, at the same time that Greece had a very high unemployment rate, more than a third of employers in Greece were reporting a significant challenge filling available jobs. So we have a very severe problem of a skills mismatch in the labor market. In other words, the skills that the unemployed have do not necessarily match the jobs that are opening up in the economy. And one of the areas that contributes to this skills mismatch is the digital skills mismatch, because as the economy is changing and is becoming digitized and technology is transforming the way the economy works, there are many, many unemployed people that lack training in digital skills, do not know how to perform jobs that today are in high demand. And so one of the major challenges we faced is trying to do something to close the digital skills mismatch and invest in the rapid skilling and upskilling of the labor force. So amongst the many, many challenges that we face, I would say that probably the biggest one in my mind is this issue of trying to bring supply and demand together and to try to find a way to reskill and upskill the labor force for the needs of a changing, rapidly changing economy. As the first vice chair of the European Network of Public Employment Services, that I've had the honor to serve in this capacity for approximately 2 years, I've had the chance to talk about this issue with my colleagues across Europe. And trust me, this is not an issue facing just Greece and Spain and Italy and countries that have higher unemployment rate. It is a problem that's facing all of us as technology is transforming everything around us, but our education and training systems were not designed in this context. They were designed for a different era with different needs and different specifications. So just to wrap up my answer to a very important and a question that really needs a lot of time to be analyzed, I'll say this. The model that maybe my generation was one of the last to experience, where you go to school, you go to university, you get a job, and you never set foot in a classroom again, that era is over. There's no such thing anymore. We constantly have to learn new things. We constantly have to update our skills and knowledge. We have to follow what's happening in our respective occupation and in the economy at large. And we need to constantly be in a mode of continuous learning, continuous improvement, and staying abreast of all the developments in our fields. So that's what we're doing as DEPA. We're investing significant funds in upskilling and reskilling through the Recovery and Resilience Facility. We're partnering with technology giants like Microsoft in a number of areas, and we are investing in exactly what is the most important capital that a country has, which is its human capital. Because in a knowledge-based global economy, that's what drives innovation, that's what drives production, and that's what leads to economic growth.
Very, very much echo and relate to all your comments, as I feel that, and we all feel that every day, where we're constantly upskilling, constantly learning, constantly getting new concepts and technologies under our belt. It's a prerequisite. I know Microsoft, we're investing in this at the global scale at a very rapid pace, and not just for us internally, but for our customers, our partners, and our students and teachers as well. And on that note, and before we jump to the Microsoft partnership, which with DEPA, and where you can tell us how that went and what you enjoyed about it, I would like to take a moment to get Alexa's perspective on the future skills and how do you see, Alexa, this trend where the demand and the supply don't meet, and how can we catch up on that?
I think many ways I can just say 100% agree with the way that Spiros has characterized both the problem and the potential solutions. I think we do see this not just in Greece, but indeed globally, that we have a challenge of the availability of talent on the job market from a digital perspective, but also for those people who are looking for work or even recent graduates. They're not necessarily coming out of institutions with the skill sets that they need to be successful in this digital job market. And we recognize, as the technology industry, we don't make it easy. We're innovating all the time, changing our technologies, updating our technologies, which makes it very hard for individuals and institutions to stay on top of this constant technological change. So from our perspective as a company, we really have a responsibility to help everyone get access to the skills and technology and opportunities that they need to succeed in this rapidly changing economy that we're all witnessing, which has only been accelerated actually through COVID. I mean, it's been a long time we talk about the skills gap, but we've actually seen an increase in the skills gap as organizations and society has digitally transformed more quickly due to the COVID impact. So I think also Spiros hit the nail on the head. We have to constantly learn and constantly retrain. And I think education institutions, universities, colleges, training organizations have a really important role to play. And there's been a shift in also how we think about particularly higher education institutions. If you look at the figures globally around who is the average student, it's no longer necessarily an 18, 19-year-old going into college to learn, but actually many more older students coming back to relearn, to retrain, and also bigger and bigger provision coming from education institutions to allow people to learn in new flexible ways that enable them to keep up their work life, to keep up their private life while they're studying. So at Microsoft, we've really been investing deeply with education institutions in the space of digital skills. We have a program called Microsoft Learn for Educators, where we support colleges, universities in adopting technical skilling as part of the education that they offer to their students. And in Greece, we've actually got 3 partnerships which are extremely important and working really, really well. We're very proud of those partnerships. Together with the National Technical University of Athens, Athens University of Economics and Business, and the University of the Peloponnese. And with these institutions, we are bringing in different types of technical content that can complement the education that the universities are offering to their students. So, for instance, with NTUA, we're working on CRM and ERP systems, which are really critical business technologies, and providing students the hands-on skills with those technologies and giving workshops, courses, curriculum, and bringing students out onto the job market once they graduate, really ready to get into a job. At Athens University of Economics and Business, we're taking a different approach, really focusing on technology that can accelerate businesses and providing 25 courses in business that involve our technologies to support that. And we're also looking to grow our footprint of certifications through these partnerships so that students and lifelong learners who go through these learning pathways have the opportunity not just to try out Microsoft technology as part of their learning pathway, but they're actually leaving the courses with both the accreditation from the institution as well as a Microsoft industry recognized certification. And our research shows that those people who go onto the job market with those certifications are both more likely to be interviewed, but they're also more likely to get better salaries than those who don't have them.
Fully in line and fully echo your comments on the global certification programs that we're offering to students, to teachers, to customers, to partners. I think it's a real value in getting up to date with the latest technologies. I think having that certified, it's even better if we're talking careers. I would go back for a sec to Spiros. I would ask, you mentioned when you took this over, it was a very challenging context with the unemployment rates, with the ranking, with everything. And you took that and you made it better over the course of a few years. My question would be, how did you choose to collaborate with Microsoft, and what were the key points what did you enjoy about this collaboration, and how did it help you eventually, because that's the point, how did it help you with your mission in VIPA?
Well, as if things were not hard enough, we had the pandemic that came along. So one of the big challenges that you face as a public employment service, or even as a training provider or institution, is how do you go about doing your business when everything has shut down and you cannot have face-to-face interactions. That's a challenge that we had to face head on. We also operate 50 vocational schools and 30 post-secondary institutions focused on vocational training here at VIPA, and we obviously had to switch using platforms that enable e-learning. And that's where the idea was born of partnering with tech giants to provide training for the unemployed during the pandemic through online training. That was something that, at least in Greece, there had not been a lot of investment in that area. I would say e-learning was still in sort of like a, not embryonic, but at a small scale. But it really exploded during the pandemic for obvious reasons. And that's where we were fortunate enough, where tech giants like Microsoft, under the corporate social responsibility context, came and provided free training to unemployed workers in high demand areas, digital skills obviously, but things that are important around cloud services, data analytics, all sorts of things. What we found out there was that you don't have to have an IT background to do IT skilling and upskilling. And I think that this is a very important point. Many unemployed or employed who are stuck in dead-end jobs and want to do something better and move up the career ladder and find a different career pathway. And they believe, and it's a fallacy and it's a myth we need to dispel, that if I don't have a background in technology, I cannot really follow. And that's not true. And when we met with the graduates from the program, we found out how their backgrounds were completely diverse and completely unrelated to IT. And not only did they finish the course, they passed the certification, they got the credential. And looking back, they were saying that I had to overcome that initial fear or that misunderstanding that I can't really pursue IT training without having a background in it. So the one big thing we need to keep as a lesson learned, at least we did from our experience, is that there are multiple ways of getting into the digital economy and participating in the digital economy, even if you have not had any related training in the past. The second thing is that the big challenge is who's going to do all this training? How can you marry quality with scale simultaneously? Usually you can do quality in small scale, or you can do large scale without quality. The needs that have been created are so vast, and the goals that governments are setting are so ambitious that in order to meet them, we're going to have to find a way to do both simultaneously. So in that context, I think it's very, very important for us to see how we can design large-scale programs while ensuring quality. And we have a big program with 80,000 unemployed workers. It was just expanded to 120,000 that Mr. Christopoulos can talk about more at length, that tries to do exactly that. It tries to do something with large numbers and at the same time ensure quality. I'll give you an example of what I mean ambitious goals. The EU has said that by 2030, I want 60% of all adults to participate at least once per year in upskilling, reskilling. That is an enormous amount of people who are going to have to participate in such training. And when I, as the head of a public employment service, look around to see who's going to provide that training, I don't see the outfits that can do that at scale and with quality. That's where we need to partner with big companies, global companies like Microsoft that have the capacity, that have the know-how, that have the ability to do things both at scale and with quality.
If I were to phrase it in one sentence, it looks to me that you made this partnership in order to get the knowledge and the resources and the education kits from a big company like Microsoft, from us, and try to apply that on the job market, tailor it, personalize it so that it responds to the needs of your job market. And being throughout this process, what would you say are the most sought after skills in technology? Do you see a shift in the perception of them in post-pandemic? And further to that, how would you continue this journey of skilling and technology to better fit the demands of the work market?
Well, I would say it's all of the above. We're in a place where there's no one single recipe or one single approach that can get us to the results that we need. We obviously have to collaborate with social partners. We obviously have to design more effective labor market diagnostic systems so we do not fall behind the developments in the market, but we actually forecast and have prognosis mechanisms so we know what's coming ahead. When I was growing up, none of the hottest jobs today even existed. There was no such thing as digital marketing when I was in school. There was no such thing as cloud services. There was no AI. There was no data analytics, user experience. All of these things that are now hot things in the labor market did not even exist 10, 15 years ago. And what I'm scared of is we don't even know 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what the needs are going to be. So now we find ourselves in a place where things are changing so fast, but all the systems we've designed were designed for moving slowly, moving in a different pace. So I see a big disconnect, unfortunately, still between our education and training systems and the needs of the economy. I think that the feedback loop that needs to exist between the economy and the education systems needs tremendous improvements. And I know that that's something that all the countries are struggling with, because the economy is changing so fast and technology is so fast that the systems we've built are just can't do the job anymore. So first thing you do is you recognize this reality that we've been discussing, which is you wake up and you realize the old system is not going to work. Second, you have to sit down with all the stakeholders, private industry, social partners, government officials, education leaders, everybody, and agree that something needs to change and needs to change fast. And the third is that you need public investments that are tied with concrete performance measures. We need to make sure that we invest in programs that work, because many times public funds are spent in programs that are not evaluated. We don't know if they actually get the job done. It's not just enough to get through a training program. You have to learn what the economy needs, what the labor market needs. I'll tell you a classic example. I was in higher education in the States, and every year you would get all the leaders of the universities and you would ask them, how are things going? And they're saying they're going great. You would ask the graduates, are you ready? To get the job that you want? Absolutely. And then you would ask the employers, what do you think of the graduates? And more than half of the employers would say, these people are not ready for work. They don't have what it takes to hit the ground running on day one. And so there's a mismatch between what the education system thinks it's doing and producing, which is they think they're doing a great job, and the recipients of that product, which is the companies, the private sector, telling you that no, these folks are not ready to get the job done.
I'd love to comment a little bit on the wicked challenge that you've described there, Spiros. And I think when we look at the talent pipeline, there's different chunks that we need to address. And one is obviously coming back to that even early education level, where we actually create the appropriate level of computational thinking and digital literacy from the very youngest age in schools, getting small children engaged with technology and understanding technology and able to use it in critical ways, because we know that that's part of the key for addressing the issue of getting technology into the hands of everyone, right? So thinking about how do we start growing that skill set right from the earliest ages through to graduation from secondary school, so that as students then go into tertiary education, they're actually equipped with digital learning, digital productivity, understanding of AI, going beyond, being very proficient users of social media into actually being able to use technology for their own growth and their own job skills. And then as we get closer into the job market, I think there's obviously this very large, massive population in Europe who are older, who are not necessarily in education. And that's where it's so important to connect with nonprofits, with smaller training organizations. I think almost everywhere in Europe, we see a similar situation to in Greece, where there's really a very much a patchwork of different organizations offering different types of training capabilities, very few that are really large scale. And so the only way to really activate a large scale digital skilling strategy is by bringing together this huge ecosystem of different small actors. And I think that's where the power of government as a convener to bring us all together and to connect with the private sector, so that we can help train those trainers, we can help train those educators, we can help put the technology in the hands of those people so that they can go out and drive the initial skilling, the reskilling, and the upskilling of people who are looking to change jobs. And I think the other thing that is important for us as the technology sector to do is also to be very clear about where are the sweet spots that can help people in terms of career changes? So, just as an example, one of the big in-demand technologies right now is Dynamics 365, which is a CRM and ERP system for managing businesses. And typically, people who get into becoming experts in that space, they may have had a computer science background. But actually, when you look at the skill set that's required for being successful with that, people who are working in, say, accountancy or financially literate areas would quite easily be able to make the shift into working in that space as well. And so thinking about, together with governments, how can we kind of really target training based on the existing skill sets that people have, so that they're building on existing experience, existing knowledge, and marrying that together with the technology, so that we're not having to say to people, okay, maybe you're unemployed, but we're going to start from zero in a technology space. But actually, how do you bring together your existing skill set together with the technology so that you can go in at a higher level and get a more rewarding job out of it?
In many conversations like this on these topics, and the case is that all of us recognize the same realities. What we've been talking about today is what all of Europe is experiencing, the whole world is experiencing, and we do need to focus on these issues. And I see it rising on the agenda, the macro political agenda. Like 5 years, 10 years ago, you wouldn't hear these conversations happening among prime ministers at that level. Now I see that this has become such an issue that it has risen on the agenda. It is a much bigger priority than it used to be. And that's a good thing in the sense that when things become a higher political priority, there's much higher chance of them actually being solved and seeing big action on them take place soon.
If it's a takeaway or a couple of takeaways for me today is talking about skilling and talking about matching the supply and demand. I think it should rely on a solid public-private partnership where public entities like yourself, and we're very happy to see this, are open to get experience and some of the knowledge we have in the enterprise environment. I think it's about the quality of the content that we're putting out there for the learners, and both the quality and the ability to match the relevant skills that are sought in the work market. I think it's about scale, so it has to be public, private, it has to be quality, scale to be able to cater for a large number of and upskill a large number of people. And last but not least, it has to be persistent over time, as it's ongoing process. Every day is a new day. Every day something new comes up. Any thoughts for the wrap up? Anything you'd like to leave us with?
I think from my side, I'd just like to conclude by saying this is urgent. This is something we need to do now. The talent mismatch that Spiros spoke to is an issue which is of critical importance even as we move through economic changes which are going on right now, because by empowering people with technical skills to be successful in their career, we're going to allow them to weather economic changes more effectively. So making sure that we address this is really going to help people survive in challenging circumstances. So that's really one of the conclusions I'd also like to take away from today's discussion.
And if you have any other thoughts or comments you'd like to share with us?
I would like to see if George had something to add on this, on especially as related to a partnership with Microsoft in Greece, because it was a really, really good program. George, do you want to say a few words about the specifics? Because I know we had a huge satisfaction rate, which is another important point that we needed to raise, that it's not just enough for the policymakers to be happy, it's enough for the people who are actually participating to be happy and for the companies to be happy.
The Greek Public Employment Agency ran this upskilling program in cooperation with Microsoft. So we offered the training courses that led to certifications for Microsoft's cloud services. Different types, for instance, Microsoft Azure Fundamentals, Microsoft Azure Data Fundamentals, Microsoft 365, a whole bunch of things, or others regarding security and compliance. So we opened up 1,000 positions for unemployed persons aged 18 to 45, and we got 2,500 applications. So from the get-go, the demand was huge. And later on, we saw that 98% of participants actually completed the course, which is also amazing. I mean, it's non-comparable, honestly, to other programs that are running, on a day-to-day basis here in Greece. And out of these people, 92% reported a positive satisfaction rate. And if I may add to that, when it came to actually getting the certification, what we got back from Microsoft was that the success rate when it came to certifications was comparable to that of actual Microsoft employees. So this, I think, ties in to what has been said so far by your guests, that, you don't have to be, highly trained in some of these sectors. I mean, you may come from another profession and you may become very proficient in one of these specialties. So I think that this was formed the basis for future cooperation with Microsoft, and we were all very happy to see these satisfaction rates, these completion rates, and to speak with these people and see that, it opened up, new potential for them in their careers, because they were people that had studied a whole bunch of different things. They had prior experience in very different sectors, and now they wanted to switch careers, and they saw this type of program as a key to succeeding in that. So it was very good to see.
Honestly, sincerely congratulate you for the work you've done, and for the success metrics and for the people feedback. Thank you very much, Alexa. Thank you, Spiros, as well. So with that, I would like to thank you for your time. Unless you
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Thank you too. It was a great conversation.